I'll call the meeting to order, and I just want to say good morning. And I'm Adele Emery, Chair of the TCHC Board's Building Investment, Finance and Audit Committee, and I want to welcome everyone to today's meeting. Due to COVID, we are still socially distant, and we're holding this meeting virtually. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. During this public session, we have 3 reports that are provided to the committee for information, and we have 10 reports for recommendation of approval from the committee, and they're outlined clearly in the agenda. As far as deputations go, we continue to follow the process that we previously established for both deputations from the members of the public and voting during the course of today's virtual meeting. Members of the public have the option to provide a written deputation or participate orally in this meeting. I will say that we had no requests today for deputations. So I will turn our attention to the agenda, and I will ask if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda for today's public BIFAC meeting. Hearing none, I will ask if there are any declarations of conflict of interest as it relates to any members for any items that are on today's agenda. Okay, hearing none, now I will ask if there are any items that any member would like to pull for further discussion during today's meeting. John?
Thank you, Adele. I would like to hold item 6, item 7E, and item 9.
6, 7E, and item 9. Does anyone else?
Madam Chair, I think you've lost audio.
Sorry, I pressed mute by mistake. Sorry. Sorry, I wanted to pull items 7C and D. I'm not sure if you heard that.
No.
Okay.
Thanks.
So could I have a motion to approve the agenda, excluding item 6, 7C, D, and E, and item 9? John, thank you. Mohammed, thank you. All in favor? Okay, so we will move to item number 6. And Barbara is on the line. And Barbara, are there any comments that you would like to make before we have questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll take just a couple of minutes to introduce the report and the basis for it. So good morning, Chair and committee members. The change order before you, the report requesting approval for the change order, arises as a result of 2 key elements. The first is a need to increase the upper limit of the contract to reflect the actual spend. TCHC exceeded the estimated spend in years 1 through 5 due to an increase in employee headcount that was not anticipated when the contract was first negotiated in 2018. And the second part giving rise to the change order is a need to extend the contract by 1 year for year 6 to allow us sufficient time to undertake the complex RFP process for employee benefits carrier services. I will highlight that there is no additional funding that is required for the additional spend in years 1 through 5. HR and Finance, as part of the annual budget process, appropriately budgeted for the employee benefits costs. However, unfortunately, the contract was not amended to reflect the additional spend that was required. I'll also point out that the assumption of the constant headcount was appropriate at the time in 2018. However, it was 2019 when the city approved the permanent funding model for TCHC, which then led to the subsequent increases in complement in order to meet the revised service commitments in the organization. I'll also speak to the fact that in this report, we highlight the portion of the costs that are relevant to Seniors Housing Corporation. So as part of our service transition agreement with Seniors Housing Corporation, Toronto Community Housing will be administering benefits carrier services on behalf of both organizations, on behalf of TCHC and Seniors Housing Corp. We are the master policy holder of the agreement, although Medavie Blue Cross will be invoicing Seniors Housing Corporation directly. So the costs that are represented in this report for Seniors Housing Corporation are not new, and in fact, they were part of the full financial disclosure provided to the Seniors Housing Corporation as part of the transition process. And we also had discussions during that time about going forward to carry out a joint RFP process for future benefits carrier services. So that was also known to them that we would undertake this RFP in the future together. And TCHC has also confirmed its understanding of its share of the cost in relation to this commitment for 2022. And understand that the 2023 costs will be identified and brought forward as part of their budget process going for the 2023 budget. I will also point out that for year 5 of the contract, Toronto Community Housing was successful in negotiating a reduced rate with our benefits provider. So under the terms of the agreement, the provider had the ability to increase premiums each year. They didn't exercise those options during years 1 through 3. They did increase rates in year 4 as a result of changes in the market, things that were occurring in relation to the pandemic. But for year 5, we were able to negotiate a reduced rate in a number of the elements of the benefits provided. And the provider has committed to maintaining those reduced rates for year 6. And finally, the last thing before I open it up to questions is that in order to prevent this situation from occurring where we come forward with this large change order for a spend over the lifetime of a contract, we are implementing steps to prevent this from occurring. And those steps include building in business unit accountability and oversight for the contract, as well as quarterly reconciliations with finance on our contracts, and finally, a broad corporate process undertaken by procurement to maintain a master database of all contracts across the organization. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have, and I am also I'm joined today by Adriana Morerio, our Manager of Payroll and Benefits.
Thank you, Barbara. John?
So Barbara, that's reassuring that you're going to be assessing these on an ongoing basis, but why wasn't this done 5 years ago? And I know you weren't here 5 years ago, but why wasn't this done 5 years ago? Obviously we've had staff increases year over year. The budget department has budgeted for this because now we're saying we're not really out this money because we've been paying it all along. So why is this being brought forward only at the very end of the contract?
So thank you, Director Campbell. It's a good question. And I think this boils down to inadequacies in contract management. So I understand the individual who negotiated the agreement on behalf of TCHC and who I'm assuming had oversight and carriage of the agreement left the organization in 2019. And it appears to me, just based on the questions that I've asked during this process of understanding the overspend, is that there was no oversight. So I don't know that the management of this particular contract appears to have fallen through the cracks. So, sir, that's.
We seem to hear that a lot. There's a lot of cracks, right?
John, I think this applies to all the multi-year contracts that we've been dealing with, and hence my comment in the in-camera meeting where these policies, it's company-wide, the issues, it's not it's single departments.
It's a little disconcerting, I guess. I
will say that everyone is working with finance to implement the processes and controls so that they're actually tracking to the VAC as opposed to just looking at the budget based on actual spends from the prior year.
So I think it was clearly a mistake to not forecast you said we needed more people as a result of increasing service levels. Was part of that taking control of the contract service buildings?
So I don't know that I'm in the best position to speak to that. My understanding is the approved funding model from the city in 2019 is probably the largest factor that allowed TCHC to revisit its staffing model and determine its resource needs in order to meet new program commitments that it would administer.
Okay.
Certainly the contract taking in the contract managed buildings would have an impact in terms of increased headcount as well.
And when we go forward into the next contract, so you've said we will be monitored, we will check these things, on a yearly basis and update the contract if necessary. Will we foresee increased headcount? I guess that's a question for Jag. Or do you think that this headcount will remain steady for a number of years?
I'm happy to start, and then maybe Jag can jump in. I think that, to the extent that we would have line of sight, that as the VP of HR, that I have a line of sight in terms of what our priorities are and our planning underway, we would have some intel if we anticipate headcount increases. But really, I think that this becomes an annual reconciliation where you go and you check the actuals against, but you don't wait 5 years to do that, right? You do that on an annual basis.
And through you, Chair Emery, I could add just to say, given the tight fiscal constraints, I don't imagine that there'll be substantial increases from a sub-staffing perspective. However, as Ms. Shulman has indicated, the control measures that will be put in place, such as the annual review and all, should prevent this for the future. But once again, I don't anticipate significant increases from a staffing perspective.
Okay, so it says on page 3, the agreement between TCHC and Medivy was based on a 5-year spend calculation of 64 million. And so then now it's essentially 94 million?
So no, the 94 million includes the amount for a year 6.
Okay.
So yes.
And so that's what we spend to provide our employees with coverage. And then how much money has gone out to those employees from Medivy? In terms of, when dental appointments are taken and paid for, and eyeglasses and shoes and chiropractors and so on, how much benefit in monetary terms did our employees receive? Do they provide that information?
Through the chair, I'm going to ask Adriana Morerio if she is able to answer that question. I don't know the answer to that. If perhaps Adriana does.
Good morning, everyone. They are providing that information at the year end. Right now, I don't have a summary of the cost, how much has been provided. And what I know, there is some surplus under the Blue Cross benefits. So we didn't spend exactly as we pay to them, but that's normal, and that's a practice under the benefits carrier, because 1 year you can have a lower cost, but next year you can have a much higher cost under
So
the
what
benefit.
what I'm looking to get at is if we're spending 94 million over 6 years, I'd like to know how much our employees are receiving from a monetary standpoint in terms of benefits. And we don't have that number.
I think we could get that number for you, what the spend has been to date, and certainly can provide that information to you.
So Dara, I would like to make that as a motion going forward, that staff report on that. And essentially, obviously, if it's 94 million in benefits that are being paid for, and 60 million benefits are being received, I mean, I don't know what the profit calculation should be for the insurer, but it's information I think we need to know.
I'm making a note. We're having some technical challenges this morning with the network, so I don't think I'll be in a position to share that, but I'm making a note of that as an action item for this matter.
And then Barbara,
Sorry, John.
Yeah.
Are you asking that the item be deferred until you know that, or?
No, I think I'm
Okay.
I'm prepared to move the recommendation and then make an additional motion that staff return with a report to BIFAC outlining the benefits received by Medivy over the life of the contract, which include and then an estimate on year 6, I suppose. And then the last question I have is it's at the top of page 2. They're asking for 11,400,000 for year 5, and then 15,500,000 for the 1-year extension. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. So the 11 million is not for the entire year. So it's basically to cover the balance of year 5. So the total contract, 64 million. The 64 million ran out as of the end of March, approximately. So 11 million covers the balance of year 5, and then the 15 million represents the cost for the entire year 6.
So, okay, and then again, Barbara, this is not a reflection on you, but obviously it's a 5-year contract. We should have been thinking about the extension and the RFP a couple of years ago, rather than, oh, by the way, the contract is up. We got to get going on the new one. So, why is putting together a subsequent RFP so much more complicated 5 years later?
Thank you, through the chair. So I think the RFP for a service of this nature is always going to be somewhat complex and requires a lot of attention from a number of different parties within TCHC. So of course, HR would be taking the lead together with finance, together with procurement, together with legal services. And when it became known that we needed to undertake this, our resources were very constrained at the beginning of this year, working on other priorities, and primarily the seniors housing transition, which impacted all of those areas that we're talking about pretty much. So
there's another cost of the seniors housing transition, by the way. I'll just add that in. Okay.
So, you know, rather than undertake something and rush it and not give it the due diligence, it seemed much more appropriate to recommend a year 6 and then undertake the process carefully, thoughtfully, and engaging all of the internal stakeholders that need to be part of such a process.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for those answers.
Barbara, and I think this may be for Dara. We've discussed this before. My question relates to governance, and I appreciate in the report that you highlight that seniors housing is aware of these costs. My concern is, as a committee and as a TCHC board, that we're approving amounts that seniors housing will be paying directly and are part of seniors housing budget without the knowledge of whether it's been approved by seniors housing. And I question whether this is good governance on our part.
So I can speak to the governance issue, at least for 2022. For 2022, we've identified, I think as Barbara's indicated, that these are costs that Seniors Housing Corporation will bear as a consequence of their being established as of June 1st. It has been part of the financial disclosure that we have provided to Seniors Housing through the negotiation of the transition agreement that we've entered into with them. And so their board, by approving the transition agreement, knows that this cost is part of the cost that they will be incurring. What's happening now is the contract is being reflected to reflect those costs in it, which have already been incorporated into the budget approvals that the board has, and that the board has approved, and that by approving the transition agreement, the Seniors Housing Corporation is approved. So as far as the need for seniors housing to approve those amounts, it's approved the financial obligation that they have through the transition agreement to assume those costs.
Okay, and we're aware that they've approved the budget that incorporates these costs for 2022. I can't remember, 1.5 million or whatever is their share. We have evidence of that.
So this board approved the TCHC budget for 2022.
Yeah.
And as part of the transition agreement, we have transferred to Seniors Housing Corporation the obligation to reimburse us for part of that cost. So they, I don't believe, have gone, Roseanne, you may have better insight into their budget approval process than I do. But from our perspective, our primary concern is, have we got an agreement with Seniors Housing that we can enforce against Seniors Housing, through which they have accepted liability for the amounts, and they have through the assumption of the approval of the transition agreement.
And through the chair, just to add to that, as part of the 2022 budget, these numbers are already included in the 2022 budget. So the cost would be transferred over to them as part of that agreement and the agreed upon calculations.
Okay. And going forward, because I understand that we are going to be holding this master agreement, and Barbara referred to an RFP, will we have evidence that they're approving their share of these agreements? Because I understand they pay them directly. And if there's any change orders that are required as it relates to their group of employees, that if we're approving that, we have evidence in advance that they've approved. I don't know what their signing authority is, and you know what their levels are as far as, you know, management, finance committee, board, CEO.
So Chair Emery, can we take that and with the team, we can ensure that their human resources and finance folks are involved in the RFP process going forward?
Okay, that would, as long as I'm a bit uncomfortable approving something that is the obligation of another organization without the
yes,
you know, the evidence that they have themselves approved it at whatever levels it is required, because it is part of their budget going forward. And I appreciate 2022. I thank you very much for that answer, Dara, but just going forward, and I don't know if this is the only case that we hold the master agreement.
So Chair Emery, I think you raise a good point, and I think there will be many instances in which it'll be a collaborative RFP, and we'll require their participation to ensure their buy-in.
Perfect. Okay. But I'm comfortable with the responses for this motion. So, and would appreciate hearing how we deal with this going forward. Sorry, are there any other questions for Barbara as it relates, or Adriana as it relates to this item? Or Dara as it relates to the governance of this item? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the change order for the employee benefit carrier services? John, thank you. Nick, seconder. Thank you. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you very much, Barbara, and thank you very much, Adriana.
Thank you.
And then I think we move on to item
17.
7C. So I guess, is that Alan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there anything you wanted to address as it relates to this item, or do you just want me to ask my
I can
my
give a
question?
brief introduction if that's okay.
Yeah.
Item 7C is requesting the approval for a $5.9 million award to Trinity Services for a needed garage restoration project at our 40 Gordon Ridge property. The work was procured using a public RFP process, with the award going to the lowest bid. The work will be completed in 4 phases, and the contractor's performance will be monitored throughout the life cycle of the project. I did want to note that there will be some disruption to our tenants with this project. It's a large project, and obviously parking garage, there will be some impact to our tenants. As with all projects, though, where we have impact to tenants, we absolutely will work with the site staff to ensure that we minimize the disruption to our tenants. And in all cases, we always work to ensure that we find alternate parking arrangements for tenants, whether that be on site or even if we have to look at off-site as well, to make sure that we can accommodate any parking needs that the tenants have. I'm pleased to answer whatever questions you have on this award.
My question was very simple. It indicated, I think on page 44, that the contract has been signed. And I just wondered if it's conditional on board approval.
Absolutely. Nothing can go out without having board approval on this. First, we need BIFAC approval, and then we need board approval. And
Yeah, just
yes.
But the contract is, I think it was the same for 7E. So they're conditional.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That was my
Thank you.
question. Does anyone else have any questions on this item for Alan? Could I have a motion to approve the contract award for garage restoration? Nick, thank you. Mohammed, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you, Alan. Motion's passed. And the next item was item 7D, which is the request to advance the water efficiency retrofits. I don't know if I had a question, but I didn't know if you wanted to make any opening comments about the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd welcome the opportunity just to make a couple comments. Item 7D, as you've noted, is in relation to a previously approved award. In September 2020, an approval was granted for a water efficiencies award to multiple vendors for an upset amount of $20 million, which was $4 million per year over 5 years. Water consumption is a utility expense that continues to be an area of focus for TCHC. Early indications of the program that we have underway are that we're having a positive impact, and thus, based on budget availability, we would like to advance the program. And in order to achieve this, we need to remove the limits on the in-year award approval spends that were previously set. And that's why we're bringing this item forward. And be pleased to answer what questions you have.
So my question was, are the annual limits on this contract different than other multi-year contracts? Because you guys, you provide us with estimates each year, but clearly as we've dealt with multi-year contracts, that has nothing to do with the spend.
Well,
and we don't approve the fact that you're spending more than you're estimating. So I was interested to understand why these annual limits were different and required our approval, as opposed to other multi-year contracts that clearly there's overspend from the estimates that are provided to BIFAC.
Thank you, Chair Emery. So you're absolutely right with other contracts that have come forward, some through my business unit and some through other business units.
We just had one in HR.
Exactly. But that's not what should happen. And that is why we are bringing going forward, I can certainly say for any facilities management contracts, and that's why we're doing the quarterly reconciliation, to make sure that if we were going over, we would be coming to you in advance with a request for a change order to indicate that our forecasting is saying X and we have approval for Y, so therefore we're bringing it in advance. And this is exactly why we're bringing this one forward.
This is a new process for us.
This is absolutely, and it is as a result of ensuring that we are meeting what we have set with getting the approvals, and we would like to do more than 4 million, but completely understand that we have approval for up to 4 million. And that's why we're bringing it forward, because we would like to remove that so that it gives us the ability to advance this program. And therefore we can improve the water efficiency of our buildings. And we thought 4 million at the time when we did it would be sufficient, but we believe we have the budget availability, and we also are seeing some good results from this program. We're seeing payback, and this is very early on. It's obviously it's still a new program, but we've had some good success in seeing the water reduction, and we're looking at like a less than 3-year payback on it. And we would like to advance the program, and to do that we require the ability to remove that in-year spend, so that we have the flexibility based on budget being available, as always, to spend more.
Well, certainly BIFAC, going back to John's comments when it related to the HR contract, we appreciate this new process. And my other question is there a change order that's required, or is the total 20 million still sufficient?
At this time, we're looking that the 20 million would still be sufficient. However, if we do feel that we need to go beyond that, we would have 2 options. And one option would be to come forward with a change order, or the second option, which I think is probably what we would do, to be honest, is we would go back out with a new tender.
Okay. I really appreciate this, Alan. So thank you very much.
I'm actually pleased to be able to bring this one forward and demonstrate that
it's
we're
great.
getting a handle on all the programs that we have.
Yes, and I commend you for doing that. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And your team. So could does anyone else have any other questions on this matter? Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the request to advance the water efficiency retrofit program? John, thank you. Mohammed, seconder, thank you very much. All in favor? And motion is passed. And thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate it. And please say thank you to your team. I appreciate that they're tracking, because I know that they're still doing it manually at this point.
Yes, thank you.
Which is not that easy. And then I would like to move to item E, 7E.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can say a few words regarding this item, with your permission.
Yes.
Item 7E is a request to direct award Taylor Smythe Architects $677,000 for additional design services and construction administration fees related to a tower retrofit at 40 Teasdale. The reason we are requesting to direct award this work versus going out for an RFX is threefold. So firstly, Taylor Smythe did the original design work back in 2016 for 30 and 40 Teasdale. The 30 Teasdale project has been successfully completed its construction, and we want to add the lessons learned from the 30 Teasdale project into the design of the 40 Teasdale project. It could be problematic to have another architect make these additions and changes. The second reason is Taylor Smythe provided contract admin services for 30 Teasdale, so they have firsthand benefit of seeing very similar project through to completion. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, is that it is financially beneficial for TCHC to have Taylor Smythe complete this work, as they've agreed to keep their 2016 fee, which is almost 1.5% lower than what we would be seeing at today's going rate. For these reasons, we're requesting approval for this direct award.
Thank you. John, I think you had questions on this item?
I did. What was the original? So you said that okay, so they've already done 30 Teasdale, but you also said that they'd done the work for 30 and 40 at that time.
Correct.
What work was that?
Well, they did the design work for both projects.
Okay.
And now we have learned lessons from 30 Teasdale. So we need the design for 40 Teasdale revised and updated based on the lessons learned from 30 Teasdale. So they need to take the original design work we had at 40 Teasdale and do some updates to it. At 40 Teasdale and do updates to it. So they're going to be revising the original design.
So that original design work, do we own that?
Yes.
We do. And so presumably another company could come in and adopt that and carry on.
They could, yes.
And what were some of the lessons learned then that are critical to making sure that 40 is, I guess, better than 30?
Yeah, there were just some things that we had with the mechanical systems during 30 Teasdale that were not contemplated at the time. And so we do want to include those in 40 Teasdale. There were some other designs as you go along and you get into the as-built conditions that presented themselves that we wanted to make adjustments to with the designs.
How much was the work? How much did the work cost for 30 Teasdale, the design work? That goes back to 2017, I guess.
It does actually. I would have to get that for you. I don't have that information. I'm sorry.
Because obviously, I mean, I don't know if it was 300,000 or if it was 250,000 or if it was 400,000 and how much of a premium this represents over that. I mean, obviously, I mean, we did go through a period where there was very little inflation. I mean, I know we all think it's been going on forever, but we went through a period of very low inflation. So, I mean, I would want to know how much of a premium this is over the work done at 30.
Well, they're keeping the same percentage from the construction value. So we aren't paying a premium to have this work added. They're maintaining the same fee based on the construction cost.
Well, we know construction costs have gone up.
Correct, but they have kept their same percentage fee, where generally in the industry you have seen the percentage fee go up. So that does make it value for money, because they're offering us they're agreeing to the same percentage fee. And I recognize that they do have some advantage with it because they've done the project at 30 Teasdale, but on the same hand, they've kept the same percentage for us. So I think it's very reasonable.
So the amount that we're actually paying will be considerably more because the contract costs have been up. So even though the percentage is the same, the actual dollar cost will be considerably higher. And yet most of the work has already been done. So they're making refinements to the original architectural drawing. So they're making refinements, and yet we're probably paying a lot more than we did the first time around. So I mean, I have trouble supporting this because I mean, even though it's a percentage term, we know that construction costs have gone up, and now we're going to be paying, even if it's the same percentage, a higher dollar amount, a considerably higher dollar amount for work that's, it sounds like it's mostly done, except for, as you said, the lessons learned and some of the modifications that need to be made.
So I think there's two pieces to that. So this award is for additional design. It is also for contract administration, though, which was not included in their original award.
How much of the work is contract administration?
I don't have an exact breakdown, but there would be a significant portion of that 600,000 that would be for contract admin, because you're doing contract admin services on a large project. This is probably about a $15 million project. So out over a number of years, and they're going to be providing contract admin services on that project. I do recognize that the construction value has gone up, but again, they have kept the same percentage rate. When we looked at it, if we were to have gone out to the market, we believe that we would have paid significantly more because not only are architects charging a higher percentage, but then you've got the increase as well of construction costs. So this is why we believe this is in the best interest of TCHC from one, ensuring we have continuity with it, and two, getting value for money.
Okay, I mean, I'm always a little uncomfortable with the sole source because then we really don't have full information. I mean, we really don't have full information. We're making an assumption that the market, that the final price will come in and exceed 676,000. When how long is this contract? How long will it take to do this work?
This project will be about 4 years to complete.
So
It's
this
a large
676,000 is parceled out over 4 years?
Correct. Over the lifespan of the project.
And is it open to you know, revisions and change orders?
There could be change orders to any project. If there were things that were found during the construction, however, we believe that we have I don't want to ever say eliminated, but we do believe that taking the lessons learned from 30 Teasdale and applying them to 40 Teasdale, this is why we're doing it now before we get into construction, so that we have a good set of drawings that are going out, which will help ensure that change orders are kept to a minimum on the project.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions on 7E? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the direct award for additional design and contract admin for 40 Teasdale? Nick, seconder? Mohammed, could I ask you to second? Thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Post. Okay.
In case I'm around in 4 years, maybe I can come back and say, you know, we should have done it differently, but I don't think that's likely to happen. So anyhow, I hope it works out, right?
Doing it differently, or you being around?
Oh, both. I hope it works out.
You're back just for this.
Maybe, yeah.
So could I had a couple of questions on J, and I'm sorry I didn't pull it at the very beginning of the meeting. Is it before Alan leaves? Alan? Don't...
No, I'm still here.
Okay. Is that okay, Dara?
Sure.
Okay. Because I don't think they relate to approval or anything. So in 7J, I just wondered, it indicates that everything's going well. I just wondered if the spends are within annual estimates or just total contract amounts. And
I'm happy. Thank you, Chair Emmer. I'm happy to answer that question. When we review the facilities management programs, we do look at annual limits that we have, just like we mentioned with the water efficiencies. So when we completed our review for Q1, we did two things. We looked at what our approval limits are based on an annual approval, the spend we have, what we have spent to date to ensure that we have not exceeded what we have approval for within the year. And then we also did a forecast to look out to the end of the year to see if we saw any issues that were present. And if there had been any issues, then that's when we would have come forward with a change order in advance to request additional authority to spend prior to getting to that point. And I'm pleased to report that we are within the annual spends and obviously the total program spends.
okay. I was just wondering, as an addition to this report, if we can get like a summary that, you know, with numbers that indicate that, you know, whatever your quarterly estimate was and
Certainly, I can.
Spends are, as opposed to just a narrative.
Certainly, we do have that same information, just like we provided the last time. I just we
yeah,
didn't.
I didn't want it by. I appreciate it by contract. I was wondering if there was some way to summarize it. I don't know.
I can look at, we have it by contract, but I could certainly try to put, maybe when we have the meeting with JAG, I can get exactly
just a
what you're looking
summary.
for.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
to see if there's some way to.
Yeah, we did have the line by line one,
Yeah,
and I knew that had perhaps was too much. So
that's way too much.
So now we'll try to find the happy medium.
Yeah, perfect. Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then I think it's item number 9. And I guess, Roseanne, I'll turn it over to you. I don't know, there are questions, so I don't know if you want to make any opening remarks before the questions are addressed.
Sure, thank you, Chair. This is the annual report where we report on the expenses for our board of directors, our president, CEO, and employees. The total year, if there's a table for total year over year, it's pretty consistent. It's 107,000 versus last year, 2020, of 103,000. So this is a result of a motion that was brought by City Council in 2011, where we do need to report these results annually.
I think it was John who had questions on this matter. Okay.
Just one quick question. There was one number that stood out on page 89 under other expenses, 22,800 for general manager right there. To what do we attribute this expense? Because it stands out.
Mainly those are for gift cards or for various situations related to tenants who were displaced from their homes. So it could be due to fire, pest related, if a fridge broke down. So most of that is related to displacement.
Displacement.
Adam Sweetling is our general manager out in the West region.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Roseanne as it relates to item number D? So could I have a motion to approve or receive? John, thank you. Could I have a seconder? Mohammed, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before the public session of BIFAC?
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
That's what I'm getting to. John, Nick, you got to second it. Okay. Thank you very much. All in favor of adjournment?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and I hope everyone has a good day.